everyone. Welcome back to S4K Talks. I'm Candy Olant. And today, oh my gosh, y'all, get ready. Here we go. We have Brittany Richmond with us today. And Brittany is just she's just an amazing and dynamic mental health expert. She's been in the field for about a decade now with a background in psychology and counseling. And Brittany is using her superpowers to help teens and young people across the country learn to live with anxiety and become an overcomer. And we love that about you, Brittany. Thank you so much for all you're doing out there. Tell everybody a little bit about your journey.
Oh my gosh. Well, first of all, thank you for the introduction. I got chills when you said that. I felt like there should be like superhero music playing or something, like with all the drops, you know?
Good
Maybe they can
80s.
edit that in.
Okay.
I love it. I love it. Well, like I said, thank you so much for having me. I'm so grateful to be here.
Yeah.
I am so awkward talking about myself. I would much rather talk about the teenagers or, really serving other people and hearing their stories. But I understand that that's why we're here, is to get to know me. So let's see, gosh, how much time do you have? I know you wanted the shortened version, but I'm not sure that's so layered. But I guess this whole journey started when I was in middle school. And actually, honestly, some younger than that memories come to mind that I even write about in my book. But just periodically, these moments throughout my life, these core memories, as teenagers say, that have really stuck with me, that affected my mental and emotional health over the years, really peaked in high school, middle school, and into high school, and came to a pretty severe head early in college. So I had always lived with this mask on, especially when I was
Mhm.
younger, like really pretending to be someone that I wasn't. I really wanted to fit in. I wanted to be looked at as cool. And what the irony was is I was friends with everybody. I was very much the model student. I got really good grades. I was the captain of my sports teams. I was involved in all the clubs, yada, 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 all the things. But what's interesting is, I was the student that everybody looked at, including my peers, and saw as like a leader. Like they don't need anything. They're good. They're vibing and thriving. Like things are fabulous, right? Like you look at certain students and you're like, oh, they're good. You know,
Mhm.
you may even give them some more responsibility,
Mhm.
or you don't monitor them as much as other students because they thrive. They're doing great. But the reality is that that was so far from the truth.
Yeah.
I only put out to the world what I wanted people to know about me. And my looking back and going through years of counseling and therapy is my ability to excel and do more was actually an anxious response
Mhm.
to not being good enough and not wanting to fail. And so I was actually, it was symptoms, anxious symptoms that were actually negative and really hurt me in the future. So fast forward to getting into the field of counseling and psychology, I did that because I wanted to serve young people at a time in my life that I felt like I had no one, which wasn't the truth, but that was my perception,
Mhm.
is that I had no one who understood how I felt. I had no idea how to talk about how I felt. And in that time frame, there were some pretty destructive behaviors that had occurred, that, things that still live with me today. A lot of
Mhm.
trauma, a lot of neglect, a lot of abuse, anxiety and depression, and led to medical diagnoses that I live with today, including an impulse control disorder called trichotillomania. It's actually where you pull your hair out in response
Mhm.
to anxiety. So I still live with these things today, but I no longer suffer from them. And that's really the big message, Candy, is how do
Um,
you go from suffering from to living with? And really, that's about taking back power and understanding that you're in more control than you realize. And as a teenager, you feel powerless, helpless, and like you're not in control when you're struggling with these things, right? So, or you see one of your peers struggling, you don't know how to help them in this process. So there's this feeling of like, what do I do? How do I take the first step? And in counseling and in psychology, we talk about all these different coping mechanisms and coping skills that we teach young people, and that's so great, but we never really talk about the first step, which is, how do I talk about how I feel?
yeah, and that
And
can be the scariest.
that, exactly, but
Oh
we can't
gosh.
we can't get to other solutions if we don't open our mouth about how we feel. So that's really what I do. I want to help them take that pressure off themselves and give them the tools to talk about how they feel.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. Oh, that's so amazing. So we need this so badly. The kids, teens, they need this so badly. And I will tell you, we're going to talk about it more a little bit later, but if you have a teen who is showing symptoms of anxiety, you need to pick up this book um, and read it with them. It is like Brittany is sitting in the room with you, having a conversation, just real. It's just a real conversation. And she's got strategies in here. She's got things that you can do in the moment to help. So pick it up. We'll talk more about that later. Um, but before we started recording, Brittany, and thank you. I know that that was outside of your comfort zone talking about yourself because I don't really like having the lens put on me personally either. So I can relate to how that feels. So thank you for expanding your comfort zone to do that for us. So that's going to be my segue into our first topic, which is expanding your comfort zone. We talked before we started recording that, and I shared with you, this hit me. This phrase, expanding your comfort zone, hit me hard in a good way because I was thinking about, people, including myself, who live with trauma and anxiety and those who live with depression. When you find a safe space in which to live and someone says you need to step out of that safe space, which is how I hear it when
Mm-hmm.
someone says get out of your comfort zone, to me that sounds like get out of your safe space, and they probably don't even mean it that way sometimes, but sometimes they
Sure.
do. You're thinking I cannot because I can't, that freaks me out, it makes me feel unsafe. But what you're saying is you don't have to abandon your comfort zone, but you can expand it. Tell us more about what you mean by that.
Well, gosh, to take you back to kind of just what you said earlier before we got into that was I think I often get asked, how can you be on stage and speak, when you live with such severe anxiety and, all of these things. But the reality is that I'm not there for me, I'm there for the kids. And I think that reframing your mindset is so powerful
Mhm,
that
mhm.
every day that my, anxiety tells me not to get on stage, like someone is missing the message that could help them.
Yeah.
Conversations like this, especially peer to peer, can change, affect, and save lives. And every day that we don't give them the tools to do that, somebody misses the message. So it's not about those of us that choose to do this. It's about the audience, like who needs the message. So it's all about how you phrase it and frame it in your mind, which to your point is why I do not believe in getting outside of your comfort zone. I think that's insane. I think when we tell people to get out of your comfort zone, I'm like, listen to how crazy that sounds. Like, why would you get out of a place of comfort, of motivation, inspiration? You feel safe there. Why
Yes.
would you put yourself in a position of feeling angst, stress, worry, anxiety, and just like unsure what to do next? Like, that is wild that we would just accept that as this is what you must do to
Mhm,
get better and grow and do all these things. And I just don't believe that that's the case. I think that we can reframe our mindset around it, right? And say, I'm not going to get out of my comfort zone. I'm going to stay in it, but I'm going to expand it slowly and do what works for me. Because at the end of the day, no matter what we do, whether it's outside of our comfort zone, there is a small, even 1% portion about what we're about to do that is rooted in comfort. So
mhm,
regardless of what you're doing, if you can come back to that place where like, what about this situation actually gives me comfort? And it could be the smallest little thing, but that alone is going to keep you grounded in your comfort zone, right? You're going to be like, this is not totally outside of what I would normally do. It's just an
mhm,
expansion of what I've done. So, for example, like when you get ready to jump in a pool, like you're on the edge of a pool, you've got two options. You can jump all in and it's painful, it's cold, it can hurt, and it takes a lot of time to adjust to that. Or you
yes.
can slowly step your toe in and ease your way in, let your body adjust. You're still going to get to the outcome. It's
Mhm,
just, it's not as scary. And I
mhm,
think when we frame that for young people, and I tell them too, I'm like, the next time someone tells you to get outside your comfort zone, just politely say, no, thank you.
mhm.
But I will focus on expanding it because the more we focus on expanding it, then we're making room for the uncomfortable things. So we're
Yeah.
actually going to be better off in the future. And again, when you're dealing with mental and emotional health struggles, a lot of it can be overcome. And I put that in quotes because that's the overcomer message. Part of it is how we choose to see it and how we choose to view it.
Yeah.
And if I can say I'm going to expand my comfort zone versus getting out of it, I automatically, even subconsciously, feel a little safe in my decision. So
Oh gosh, so well said. So much you could unpack there too.
I
And
know.
I think like when you are able to expand that comfort zone and you start to feel a little success from that expansion, okay, here comes the resiliency. Here
Oh,
comes
yeah.
the able to build some grit along the way. So allow people the space to expand and grow in a way that is healthiest for them because it's not one size. It's not ripping band-aids off. Like we've evolved too far for that to be the thought process,
I know.
right? Come on. Okay, now conversely, what if a teen's comfort zone has become toxic or unhealthy? How do they self advocate and move out of that into a healthier space, into a healthier comfort zone?
I think it comes with the expansion process. There are a lot of comfort zones that we all have, even parts of our comfort zone. If you draw it like a Venn diagram, that have toxicity. And I came from a very toxic environment, but it was still my comfort zone. But
Yeah.
as you grow and you start to find things that bring you joy, your comfort zone actually morphs into things that are healthy and serve you, right? And that's one of the things I write about in the book too, is learning to identify the things in your life that are healthy and that serve you, because those are your proactive coping skills, right? Those are things you can do every day when you feel well to help keep you well.
Yeah.
And also in that process of redefining your comfort zone, I think that's part of it too, is discovering who exactly you are. Like, coming from my experience of not really having an identity because I focused so hard on fitting in
Mhm.
that I didn't really even know who I was, which led to a lot of negative behaviors, which I'm trying to save kids from having to go around in through that process. So how can we just help them start now? Because even adults struggle with this, right? They struggle
Mhm.
with self-care and putting themselves first. The
Yes.
the older you get, your responsibilities go like this and the time you have for yourself goes like this, when in reality, if we flipped it around, we might actually have better time management, we'd be healthier mentally and emotionally, and have better
Mhm.
relationships. So that's the skill of identify the things that bring you joy. And I knew what those were when I was younger. I just chose not to do them because I wanted so badly to fit in and be accepted. So, which was not, it's just because I didn't have confidence in who I was at the time. I kind of went off on a tangent, so I'm unsure if that answered your question.
It did. No, it was beautiful. Like this is just a completely organic, well, sort of organic conversation because I have certain points I want to hit, and but no, I think those pearls of wisdom that flow out of you are coming out for a reason. So let them flow, sister. Just let it fly.
Let it
It's fine.
fly.
Let it fly. Um, oh my gosh. So teenagers are facing unprecedented pressures and draws on their attention with social media and I mean there are staple things that are consistent throughout generations,
Sure.
but but with the introduction of social media and it being so prevalent and everything, um, it's reaching areas that normally weren't reached, and what I mean by that are more rural areas. So thinking about, teens that are living in very, very small towns that have very small friend groups. There's a couple of things I want to ask you about there. So one is I've got a really small friend group, and we're all consuming a lot of social media, and we're seeing and we're comparing ourselves and we're comparing false lies on social media, people renting homes and filming content and trying to pass that off as their own. They're renting vehicles, they're renting wardrobes. These things do not belong to them. They have not earned them for
Hmm.
keeps, right? But they're passing it off as this is my reality. And here I am in a probably a lovely small town where a lot of people really care about me, but I may not feel that way. I'm comparing myself constantly. I'm looking at my friend groups, and those friend groups become a little oh gosh, I don't want to say toxic. I don't want to judge it that hard, but maybe there's a little conflict, maybe there's some comparisons being drawn and you don't know what to do. Like it's causing you anxiety because you're afraid the next time you show up at that party or you show up at school, you're going to be judged for what you're wearing or you're going to be judged for the way you act or how does a teen living with a small friend group deal with those kinds of pressures?
Well, that was definitely me. I still live in my town that I went to school in. I'm in a town of about 400 people. It's a small farm community in central Illinois, and my graduating class was like 60 people. So,
Wow.
and a lot of the people I went to school with still live here and have
Mhm.
kids, because farm communities, get a lot of people that leave. It's very much, a little tight knit thing. Or if they leave, they come back, right? It's just part of it. So I had struggled with how everybody knew your business or thought they
Mhm.
knew your business.
Mhm.
There was always that, but this is such a layered question
It is.
because there's really no one solution to the problem. But I think a place to start is having young people understand that perception is reality. And what I mean by that is what they see is just naturally what they believe to be true.
Mhm.
So if that's the case, then I need people to know that people only put out to the world what they want you to know about them,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
they do the same thing. And I challenge people like, you only put out to the world what you want people to know about you. And I have people
Mhm.
all the time say to me, like, you're so real, you're so authentic on social. I'm like, in the moments I put out, because you're not with me 24/7, right? Like,
Mhm.
you don't see everything about my life. I choose not to put everything about my life out there. There's so, and that's not being inauthentic. That's protecting myself and my peace, right? So
Yes.
it's just about understanding that when we zoom out on social, what are we really going to see? And that's hard to understand, especially this generation who grew up with cell phones in their hands and
Mhm.
social media and didn't know the other way. And
Mhm.
it's just they are adapting to a world and living in a world that we as adults have created.
Mhm.
So there is just that piece of ownership and accountability on our parts to kind of see, how can we make this right now? How can
Mhm.
we put out content that is valuable to help them grow and be inspired? And honestly, like the things that you're doing, like Stand for Kind and other youth speakers I know, authors, people out there advocating for young people, we're here because we've experienced the things and we
Yes.
want to save people from going through those moments. And having done that myself, showing up to parties and being like, am I wearing the right boots or am I going to get judged for what I'm wearing? I felt all of those things and we didn't have social.
Yes.
And so I challenge young people, like, that was pressure and perception I put on myself. So
Yeah.
the pressure that young people are feeling, I always ask them, like, is this perceived pressure or do you actually feel the pressure? Like, are we creating these situations? Are we creating these moments? And sometimes it just comes down to also just being comfortable with who we are. And
Yeah.
young people are in a phase in their life where they're trying to discover that. And there's going to be moments like this where they're going to be questioning their own actions and what they should do in those moments. So, can we give them the tools to know that? Can we give them the tools to start to understand that while your thought process may be normal, I don't want you to lose your identity in trying to accommodate somebody else so you feel accepted? Because if they accept you, great, but you're not being authentic. So
Yeah.
they're not really accepting you for who you are. So they don't really like you for who you are because they don't know who you are because you're not yourself. It's like this vicious like cycle. So
Right.
yeah, it's a loaded question.
I tell you, wearing the mask, and you talk about this too, wearing the mask is not sustainable.
Right. Right.
We do it kind of uh, to protect ourselves sometimes, and because we don't know how to fit in, and we think it's the best thing to do, but in reality, it hurts us in the long run.
Oh
I
my
don't.
gosh. The irony of the mask wearing and how it can't be sustained is so many young people, especially girls, have lived with so much anxiety over comparing themselves to other people. I mean, there's been studies done that have shown that girls are more susceptible to anxiety and depression because of comparison versus boys. And I've seen young girls, this behavior, these how they cope with that manifest in hurting themselves or hurting other
Mhm.
people. And just it's just like you're doing this because you want to be loved and accepted, but do you see that the backlash is now falling back on you because your mind, your heart, your body knows this is not what you should be doing. So it's like, how can we get them to see that? How can we not necessarily get them to love themselves for who they are? We do want that, but to get them to see that people love them for who they are.
And they're
You know?
worthy.
Exactly.
That
Exactly.
person under the mask is worthy of
Exactly.
shedding the mask and being loved. And personally, I dealt with that for a long time, is not feeling worthy just because of trauma that I experienced in my childhood. And it
Exactly.
took a long time to figure out what that was
Hmm.
and why.
Right.
Like, you think it's obvious, you're walking around, but it's not always if you're living in it. It's just, yeah, it's kind of wild. But you made me think of a quote. Thief is the, oh, what was it? No, comparison is the thief of joy. And I do think that is incredibly accurate. Um, okay, so in your book and through your speaking, you talk about vocalizing how we feel. And
Hmm.
at Stanford Kind, we have created a curriculum for teens and K through 12. And part of that is helping students identify putting words to how they feel.
Hmm.
So, in your opinion, how are you coaching teens to put their words into feelings so that they can get the support that they need?
I love the picture analogy. I tell people because a lot of times young people are like, I can't explain it. I can't explain it. And I'm like, well, draw it out for me. Like, what does it look like if you were to draw a picture? I mean, I've had young people say it feels like Freddy Krueger is inside of my chest trying to claw out. I'm like, excellent description. Like
Mhm.
that's
Yes.
a really great way for us to start to understand how they feel. I think that to even get to that point though, we have to give them the tools how to even talk about how they feel. So, and I think one of the things that needs to be addressed is their mind is just lying to them, and I need them to know that, in a sense of mental and emotional health struggles seek to keep us isolated, which is why we don't talk about how we feel. I mean, I've asked audiences of hundreds and hundreds of teenagers and say,
Mhm.
how many of you agree that talking to somebody about how you feel is beneficial? And then every hand goes up in the audience. And then I say, how many of you are actually talking to somebody? Nobody raises their hand.
Oh my
And
God.
but there's so much clarity in that for me and for the other people, because we all saw that you agree that it's
Mhm.
good, but now
Mhm.
you're telling us you don't do it. And they don't do it because they don't want to be judged. People aren't going to understand how they feel. So what's the point? People don't want to be seen as weak. They feel shame in how they feel, all of
Mhm.
which are just lies that their
Mhm.
mind is telling them to keep them isolated. And
Yeah.
isolation is where it thrives. And so, how can we overcome those lies? How can we show them that those actually aren't true? And one of the things I like to say is, my favorite one is, people don't understand. People aren't going to understand how I feel. So I don't want
Mhm.
to talk about how I feel. And I'm like, well, when have you ever broken your arm? You ever broken a bone? Most athletes are like, yes, I've broken a bone. Great. When you go to the doctor and the doctor comes in to see you, does he say, oh, wait, I can't really treat your broken arm yet. I actually have to go break my own arm first so I can get a better understanding of how to put it back together, because I have to know how you feel in order to help you. And I'm like, that does
Mhm.
not happen.
Right.
People do not have to understand how you feel in order to help you. And
Mhm.
that is a huge revelation I need young people to know, because we so desperately want people to understand. But I'm like, listen, friends, how I feel in the peak of like the really rough moments, I don't want people I know how to feel that. It's not good. Like, we don't
Right.
want to put that on other people. So it's our responsibility, and that's the ownership piece I talk about in the book with young people too, is like, I want them to start to take ownership over their mental and emotional health. That there's power in that. There's so much power in that, and in something that's making them, it's convincing them that they're alone, that they have no
Mhm.
control, that this is just the way their life is. This is the war that's going to go on with their mind forever. Nothing they can do is going to change it. And that is all lies.
Mhm.
So the expanding of the comfort zone plays into this so well, because I'm giving them little baby step tools in person when I speak to them, these conversation pieces that are just so powerful that I get messages from all the time. Even the other day, I got a message and they were like, we thought this was a joke. We started doing it as a joke, but we've been doing it for months and our relationships have transformed. My
Oh,
friends and I actually talk about how we feel. And it's just 3 words, Candy. It's tell me more. You read it in the book. It's
yes.
extremely valuable. And I just play that out with them. I want them to do that before I leave. And it's just kind of what I'm known for. But that is so key, is to create space and hold space for young people to share.
Tell me more. I love that because you also talk about, especially in the South, we do this a lot. How are you? Oh, I'm fine.
Exactly.
Oh, I'm so not fine.
Exactly.
You're walking around, you're so not fine. But you're like,
Exactly.
and then you're like, well, how about if we ask a different way and invite this, keep space for someone to tell us more about how they're feeling. And maybe, I don't know, Brittany, maybe some people don't know what to do with it when someone does tell them exactly how they feel, you know?
And that's okay. The what's interesting with young people and tell me more is a lot of times when I get them doing this, they maybe will go one layer deeper. And then the person repeating tell me more is like, tell me more. And then the person speaking is like, I literally don't know. And I'm like, that's good. That's good because, your brain's actually reflecting on the tell me more. And it's not always about getting to the root in the moment. It's about showing people how very simple and non intrusive these conversations can be,
Oh,
because
that's
you're giving the power to the person to talk about whatever they want to talk about. And when they hear tell me more, they're not hearing somebody that wants to give advice. They're not
Mhm,
hearing somebody who wants to fix the problem. They're
mhm,
just hearing somebody that's like, wow, this person actually cares for a minute.
mhm,
Interesting. And you
mhm.
may not divulge everything in that moment. In fact, I don't want them to. I want them to keep expanding that comfort zone and try it over and over and over, because it's going to get to a point where you're like, now I feel like I can talk about it. And the more that they talk about how they feel, the
Mhm.
less power these things have over them.
Oh my gosh. Yes. I had a conversation with someone yesterday about when it's in our head, the lies. Okay, that's your book. Lies My Anxiety Has Told Me. When these lies are surfacing in your head, or they're binging around in your head like beans, jumping beans, it grows into this animal. So the anxiety that is talking, or whatever's talking in your head, okay, these lies that you're telling yourself, they grow, and they grow teeth, and they grow hair, and they grow claws, and it gets really ugly up in there. But then when you say it, or you
Mhm.
journal it, you express it, you use some artistic medium to get it out, whether that's writing music, creating a piece of art, then it takes some of the power away from that lie and exposes the truth of it. And that is just so powerful, I think. So I'm glad you brought that up. I'm glad you said all that. Um, what if a teen is struggling and they've got all the lies circulating in their head, and they're trying to get an adult to say, tell me more, but the parent is either not emotionally available, in denial, just really is just not able to create space for that teen to open up. What advice would you give the teen?
Don't stop trying. Like I think that there's so much power in consistency. And I it's really interesting because when teens approach people about, hey, this is how I'm feeling, there have been situations, because, and again, I'm just generalizing from what I know, not everybody's like this, but they have been dismissed from their feelings,
Mhm.
right? They've been dismissed because many reasons, right? Like my husband's a high school teacher. I was a counselor. I've seen a lot of these situations from other people too. And it's like, well, this kid just has a history of being dramatic, or this kid has a history of this, or this, or this, or this. And we have these preconceived notions where it's like, okay, yes, maybe they want to talk. Maybe they don't. I don't really know. There's this,
Mhm.
sometimes that just is what it is. And I often tell people though, and I've talked to teachers about this too, that if you're not the right person, pass it off on somebody else. And I tell young people, you can't say the wrong thing to the right person,
Mm,
period. And
mm,
if you're not getting the response that you desire, this may not be the right person. So when I
mhm,
say be consistent and keep trying, find someone else. And it may be somebody you didn't expect. In fact, I'm getting ready to launch a podcast later this year with somebody who came into my life totally unknowingly. And
mhm.
because he was struggling so hard with his mental and emotional health. He reached out to me and we developed this very real friendship. Never conversed. I mean, he has so many supportive people in his life, but they just weren't the right people. And I just happened to be the right person for him. And but that came with consistent effort and
Yeah.
expanding his comfort zone to reach out to me,
Yeah.
and if I can't help someone, I definitely pass to somebody who I feel could. So that's my challenge to adults, is if you feel you are not mentally or emotionally available to do this, there's nothing wrong with that, but acknowledge it and pass it on, right? Find
Mhm.
someone who is, and there's no shame in that. There's
Mhm.
only the only misstep is if we just dismiss it, in my opinion.
Mhm.
Just
Mm.
dismiss it and let it fall flat, because it's not about us, it's about them. And we need to treat everybody like this is the most important conversation that they're going to have, in my opinion. So,
No, I think it's a very valid opinion, and it's based on a lot of experience as well. When you launched with "Don't Give Up," that applies to so many different aspects of their life.
yeah,
Don't give up. Don't give up hope. Don't give up trying. Don't give up on your purpose. Don't give up on yourself. Like there's just so don't give up is just it's just a mantra, right? I mean, that's a big one.
absolutely. And I have a lot of people I know that are in therapy. I'm a huge advocate of therapy and counseling. I mean, I'm in therapy and counseling. I love therapy and counseling. I can't talk enough about how much I love it. But my first few therapists were not great, and I tell people that. I'm like, this is like any other relationship. You have to find the person that is a good fit for you. So that is also consistency, right? You can't say the
Mm-hmm.
wrong thing to the right person. And sometimes you have to find that person. So I challenge these young people to keep talking and keep trying and keep reaching out. You never know who it's
Yeah.
going to be. And to the adults, like I said before, like if it's not you, then it's just somebody else. But you got to make that connection. So,
Right. Right. Totally. Okay. So that makes me think of another question that I had for you. Boundaries, emotional boundaries, not giving up on yourself, not giving up on yourself. I think a big part of that, in my opinion, and what I've seen and lived through, and I was also an educator, and so I worked with a lot of kids
mm-hmm,
and their parents actually.
mm-hmm,
Um, Setting emotional boundaries, maintaining those boundaries, and then being okay with sometimes people leave your life when they don't have control over the pre-boundary personality. They go and then we feel like, oh my gosh, we did something wrong because we were trying to protect our peace, we were trying to, set a personal emotional boundary. What advice would you give? And this makes me think of athletes too, because they're pulled in so many different directions. They have to be the academic scholar. And I speak to you because I know you know this from personal experience being a student athlete. They have the academic piece, they have the social piece, they have the athletic piece, they have their image that they're trying to project out into the world. They don't want to screw up. So their boundaries become very, very porous, and there's a lot of junk coming in and out, and they're not able to maintain. What advice would you give these teens on setting and maintaining emotional boundaries? Sorry, it took me a long time to get there, but I just wanted to set that up.
I think the first thing I'd say is that we all struggle with it. So,
Mm-hmm.
I, me included, I think that especially being in the position I'm in, I mean, I get young people that reach out to me all the time on social, and it's just, you want to be there for all of them. But like, I don't have the mental or emotional capacity to get back to their DM initially when they send it to me.
Right.
Like I'm very much like, I only answer my DMs like once a week kind of thing.
Good.
And and I've had people, not students, but people be like, hey, it's been like 3 days, you haven't answered my message. And I just let it sit there for two reasons.
Yeah.
One, it's uncomfortable for me to let it sit there, but I need to let it sit there because I need to be okay with the fact that I'm letting it sit there, and I need to feel this feeling and ask
Mm-hmm.
myself, why do I feel stressed about this? Like, you know, I'm very much taking ownership of this situation. So,
Mm-hmm.
one of the first things I tell young people is when you start setting those boundaries, if you decide to, is you got to sit with the uncomfort, right?
Yeah.
You got to sit with
Yeah.
it. You got to recognize it and move through it, because because our initial reaction is to make it stop, right?
Mm-hmm.
We want to please somebody else so we can stop feeling negative. But
Mm-hmm.
if you feel the negative, guess what? You're going to feel when you get through it. And then
Mhm.
you're going to get through the negative and you're
Yeah.
going to be like, and the next time it feels uncomfortable, probably won't last as long. The next
Mhm.
time, maybe it won't feel uncomfortable. You just got to hang on through the discomfort. And sometimes the discomfort needs to be recognized that that's a them problem, not a you problem.
Mhm.
So, I
Mhm.
mean, there's so much really cool things that happen when you start setting boundaries. And
Mhm.
the cool thing is people do leave your life that don't belong there.
Mhm.
And I think we can say that because we've experienced it, but
Mhm.
unless they've experienced it, they just don't know.
Right.
And but and I don't like being the adult that, and whatever that is, that stands in front of students and says, I did this, it's all gonna work out.
Mhm.
Like we've heard that, like
Cringe.
cringe, right? It's like I get it. So I try to tell people, like, I struggle with this too. I struggle with it every day. But that's why I think sitting with that uncomfort, that discomfort that you feel because you feel like you're letting someone down, and just always asking yourself, like, is this a me problem or is this a them problem? Because the boundary that you're setting,
Mhm.
you don't have to explain why you're doing it. We tend to over explain ourselves,
Mhm.
and you don't have to justify it as long as you are doing it because you want to stay centered and there's a reason. Then hold true to that reason. Don't give
Mhm.
up on that reason. Don't let yourself down because you're trying to move out of the discomfort. You're trying to be like, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry. Oh gosh, one thing I'm working on is stopping to say sorry for everything. Like, I even
Man.
wrote about that in the book. Like, I went to Starbucks the other day and they gave me the wrong order and I apologized to them. And I'm like, I'm sorry. Like, what? Like, why am I sorry? Like, and I just was like cringing at myself. And I'm like, I'm sorry. I said sorry. I have no reason to say sorry. Like, it was like one of those things. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm the problem. But it's ridiculous. But I totally get it because of that. But so now, like, I told myself next time I'm going to be like, hi, this is not the wrong order. Could I please get the right order and then not apologize for the inconvenience? Because that was a them problem, not a me problem. So really just kind of, examining the situation almost like you're watching yourself like a movie, right? Like because we're really good at that. We're really good at telling other people what to do.
Yeah.
But it's like, why don't you tell yourself that,
Yeah.
for a second? So just give yourself grace and self-forgiveness in this process of setting boundaries because it's going to be messy at first. You're going to feel uncomfortable. But I always tell people, I'm like, just set the one boundary, just test it,
Mhm.
see if
Mhm.
it works for you.
Mhm.
And always move through the discomfort. Allow yourself to move through this discomfort so you can see that you make it to the other side. So,
Yeah. Give
long
yourself,
answer.
that was a great answer. Give yourself the space to get into the feels and really sit with it, examine it, because if you keep pushing it down and pushing it down, it's just going to rebound. And every
Oh,
time it rebounds, it's harder. It hits you harder and it becomes bigger with more teeth and claws. So yeah, man, you got to give that stuff space. One thing that I heard some kids at our summer camp talking about, Stanford Kind does a summer camp with teen ambassadors, and we do lessons and curriculum and activities with them and everything. Is we were talking about emotional boundaries, and they were one little girl or one young lady was talking about how she journals a lot with her.
nice.
Yeah, and she was like, I sometimes forget the success that I have achieved through setting an emotional boundary, but then I go back and I look at my journal and I realize how far I've actually come.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I know. I was like, oh, you're such an enlightened young woman. Oh my God,
Exactly.
good for you. I'm going to learn from you.
I was going to say, like, maybe we should all try doing that now.
Yes, yes. I was so blown away by them. They're very, very cool. Um, so thank you for sharing all that. That's just amazing. So let's talk about the elephant in the room, the anxiety. Our anxiety. Um, and living with anxiety, you talk about in your book, instead of it just taking us by the teeth and dragging us around everywhere, you have been able to get into a place where you can live with it. You're thriving, you're achieving, you're expanding your comfort zone, and you're getting up on stage in front of hundreds, thousands of people to be able to advocate for living with anxiety. So let's talk about, for parents who are not quite sure, they're looking at their teen, They're noticing some patterns. They're
Mm-hmm.
not exactly sure what they're seeing.
Mm-hmm.
What is what are when a teen is in the throes or dealing with anxiety, what does their body look like? What's going through their head? What things are parents going to see and hear from their teens?
That's again a loaded question because anxiety can manifest itself in a lot of different ways. Like for me, it was being the model student, right? And I just, it manifested itself in overachievement and constantly trying to be the best and being the best to hide any shortcomings or anxious feelings I felt about failure or, coming up short or being second place or second best. So
Mhm.
the behaviors that I exhibited were all from the outside, very positive behaviors, right? Like
Mhm.
very much like, yes, my kid is amazing.
Yeah.
So but that's not how I felt, that's not how I felt. And actually looking back and speaking with my mother about this, because she didn't know it at the time, right? Of course,
Mhm.
but I was very somewhat antisocial at
Mhm.
the same time. Like I would not go out with friends. I didn't like to go to movies. I really valued staying at home a lot to the point where like the running joke when I got older was cut the cord, Brittany, time to cut the cord,
Mhm.
like, and that was the running joke. But the reality was like, I was very much retreating to my comfort zone. I didn't feel the need to be social. I mean, I'm still very much kind of that way now. And it's something that I have been working on, like
Mhm.
consistently in my life. And making friends is one of those things that I write about in the book is,
Yes.
I can go days, sometimes weeks without leaving my house,
Mhm.
depending if I'm traveling or not. And, my husband will be like, it's time to leave. It's like, I don't want to leave, but
Mhm.
that was a clear sign looking back that
Mhm.
I was dealing with some pretty severe anxiety. I was doing all the things out in public like I should, but then I was like, close the door, leave me alone.
Yeah.
It was, I just want to stay here. So I think the first thing I want to say to parents is it's not your fault. I like to really remind them that being a teenager is hard. I'm sure they can remember, but they're living in a world that is so much different than ours with the social media and, just the constant contact and instant gratification and just all of that.
Sure.
And, if you're feeling the pressure from all of us because of what's happening in the world, I mean, there's a lot of different factors and a
Yeah.
lot of different things that are coming into play right now that we had, but just not to this extent.
Mhm.
So it's going to be okay. And I think they also need to give themselves grace in this process
Yeah.
because they're going to want to help so badly. And sometimes you're just going to be met with so much resistance because they don't understand how they're
Mhm.
feeling. So that's why those tools, like, and one of the things I talk about is how to start to create space openly and tell me more is just so powerful there. Because
Mhm.
the last thing a kid wants to do is talk to their parents about how they feel.
Mhm.
I mean, I'm generalizing, of course,
Sure. Sure.
but if you can just say, how was school today? Oh, school sucked. Well, tell me more. That's
Yes.
not saying, well, why did it suck? Because you're being so directive with
Right.
that. You're
Right.
so directive, it almost closes the door. It
Yeah.
just did. Bye. And it's just like, well, tell me more.
Mhm.
Well, what do you want to know? Well, tell me more about why it sucked. Like, tell me more about what happened today. Like, tell me more is such a non intrusive 3 words. And the last thing again a teenager wants to feel is like you're intruding right, but the grace also comes from the fact that, I mean, neurologically, and we can talk about this a different day, it's a totally different conversation, but if you want to get sciencey,
Mhm.
their mind isn't capable of seeing the big picture yet. That's not even
Mhm.
fully developed to like 25,
Right.
and I'm not even sure mine has been developed yet. It's like sometimes I'm like, what is happening? Like what is going on? But just to give them some grace, and it's okay to not have all the answers. I think as parents, and that's coming from I'm not a parent, but I had parents and I lived through all of this and I still live through this with them. I know the frustration and the guilt that they carry because of things that I've done and behaviors that I've had. Like they very much blame themselves, but it is so not their fault. I was in total control of my behavior. I made decisions,
Mhm.
to do what
Yes.
I did and behave how I did. But I think one of the most powerful things they did was introduce me to counseling. Absolutely. I mean, I was so resistant to that. I was so resistant. I didn't want to go to an office. I thought it was weird. I didn't want people to judge me. I didn't want to talk to people. But like once I met my first counselor, may she rest in peace because she passed away a few years ago.
Mm.
Um, it was just like a conversation. I think that's really where I fell in love with this was how can I just have conversations with people
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
let them tell me how they're feeling and not ask how they're feeling, which is
Mhm.
why Tell Me More is so great. It's not even like a question. It's an
Mhm.
invitation.
It is an invitation.
And it's so good. It's so good. And I'm just so grateful for those moments. And I wish somebody would have helped me more with that when I was younger. And that's probably being a Monday morning quarterback, but I really do think if somebody would have stand in front of me and tell me they made it through what I've been through and they understood how I felt, that would have made all the difference in the world.
Oh my gosh.
And that's why I want to be that person for them. So
Yes.
that was a really long answer to your question.
Love your long answers. I think they're so rich and there's so much in there that I
If
hope
people are still listening, you're amazing.
oh, they are. My heart tells me they are. They're here because they want to help their kids or they want to understand or they're a teen who's trying to understand how they're feeling. So it's all good. What is when you were talking, it made me think of the difference between recharging my social battery and isolating, where if a parent's like, well, they do tend to crawl into a hole for the weekend, I think, you can tell me your opinion on that. If they're recharging their social battery, it's temporary. It's not a pattern necessarily. Where if they're isolating, it becomes extreme and it becomes long term. It's happening all the time and it's avoidance. It becomes, I'm not doing the things I used to enjoy. I'm not engaging. I'm not meeting new people. I'm not joining clubs. I'm not going to practice. How do you, am I in the right ballpark there with those two?
Yeah, I think I was just thinking about my own experience. I was like, well, I definitely did a healthy combination of both in those moments. But I, because it's ironic because I still isolate today, but the isolation isn't always negative. I very much am not a social person in a
Right.
sense of like filling my cup that way.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes I just really like being on the couch with my cat and like
Mm-hmm.
watching Gilmore Girls for 6 hours. Like that is just
Mm-hmm.
there's a joy there that I can't even express.
Mm-hmm.
But I totally understand how some people would be like, "Wow, is she depressed?" Like, you know what I mean? Like
Mm-hmm.
it's a strange combination. But I that's what I wanted to do in college when I was engaging in such terrible behaviors is I really just wanted to be home with my cats, watching Gilmore Girls. That was
Mm-hmm.
really just like wow, so much joy in that moment, especially it's just so good. But it is so good. But that is something I have come to terms with that brings me joy and that is healthy and that serves me. And that's the key factor here is if you see rapid behavior change like that, like
Mm-hmm.
totally isolating when that is unusual, not going to practice, not going to go to school, just being defiant, like a messy room when they're usually really clean. If there is drastic behavior change, that is typically a very clear sign of a mental or emotional health struggle like anxiety and depression. That
Mm-hmm.
is one of the easiest, and I put that in quotes realizing because nothing is really easy, but it's definitely one of the easier signs that like something is up,
Mm-hmm.
like this is
Right.
should be addressed. But I think as long as they are, and I always make this distinction, if the behavior is healthy and serves you, and what I mean by that is, does it move them forward physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, financially, or in their relationships, then this is a positive behavior to lean into. Because
Mm-hmm.
there are so many behaviors out there that feel good in the moment that we could all engage in, but how do
Mm-hmm.
you feel after? Like
Mm-hmm. Right.
so that's why I think helping young people identify and being comfortable with the things that bring them joy. Like maybe they really do love doing XYZ, but none of their friends do. So they
Mm-hmm.
don't do it as often because they feel judged or maybe their friends don't like it or it's like you can do that. Like that is healthy and that serves you. What's not
Mm-hmm.
healthy and what doesn't serve you is neglecting that because then you're going to
Mm-hmm.
start to engage in behaviors that probably aren't healthy and don't serve you because they do make
Mm-hmm.
you feel good in the moment. So really being comfortable and accepting yourself with the things that bring you joy and also recognizing that those things will change. That's
Yes.
so
Yes. You talk about in your book, I loved this part. When you were talking about revisiting your goals
oh yeah.
and um, sometimes the path less taken has the best views and experiences. That's quote unquote from Brittany's book. And I love that. And I wrote like my own little novel down here. Um, as we heal from past trauma, disappointment, or failures, our goals may change, right? Or at least we have to pivot, because when we view our future from a healthier lens, our goals for ourselves will be bigger. They will be more ambitious. They will be filled with more excitement instead of anxiety.
I
And I
know. And
love that you talk about that.
that's all the young people I talk to today, especially juniors and seniors in high school, is they have this amazing vision for their life. And the next thing I typically hear is, well, if it doesn't happen, I have failed. Like that's the next thing that comes out of their mouth. And I'm like, okay, like I'm a two-time college dropout. I got out of college with almost $200,000 in student loan debt, and I'm not doing anything like I went to school for. Not really,
Right?
And I still am not sure like what I want to be when I grow up. Like you never know. And I'm just like, why do we automatically as society put so much pressure on 18-year-olds to be like, what do you want to be for the rest of your life? It's like no wonder they're all anxiety ridden, okay? Because we've set them up for failure with just that question.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my gosh, like you haven't even traveled or experienced life or met people or like, do you
Mhm.
even know what you like to do? Like, what do you like to do? And so I talk about course correcting, like with young people, it's like just like when you set a GPS on your phone, like with Siri, right? She gives you the easiest path to get there. And that's the vision they have in their heads right now is I'm going to do this and this and this and this. And I'm like, okay, well, what happens when you take a left instead of a right? And they're like, well, she course corrects. I'm like, exactly. So
Mhm.
inevitably, and I'm literally 100% sure the path to where you want to go is not going to be the way you have it laid out in your head because life happens.
Yes.
But I'm like, just because it starts to put you off the path doesn't mean that end goal can't be, what happens. You just may have to take a different way. You're just gonna
Yeah.
have to course correct.
Yeah.
And already having that in their mind can take away some of that anxiety, which you should see there every time I tell the story, the college story, and you know what it is, Candy, because you read the book. And
Yes.
the way I deliver it, at the end, it's like, oh my gosh, I got into Columbia. It was so great. And everyone in the audience is always like, yay. Some audiences even clap, because I talk about that mental breakdown that led up to that. And then I let them clap. And then it's like, I was there for 2 weeks and then I dropped out. And then the whole audience, like, like you see some of their faces, and it's just like, I just need them to know, like, how much life can just throw at you, but
Mhm.
how do we overcome that, right?
Mhm.
So the goal is always, always, always to let them know that they're not alone. At the end of the day, that's my goal, is whether they're struggling now or they struggle later in life, I want them to think back to this moment where they're like, there was a woman that stood in front of me who told me a story that's very similar to what I'm going through, and she ended up okay. If that's all they take, I'm so thrilled. So
Yeah. That's awesome. Through that process, you have learned to, or I don't know, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but it seems like you've learned to accept yourself, love yourself for who you really are. And there are many layers to Brittany. There are many wonderful facets to Brittany. There are many things that we will never know, that I'm sure you're just a light out there. But it's taken work. It's taken a lot of work, and it's taken a lot of acceptance and grace to get where you are today. And you know, you you realized that your path was going to be different than what you had originally envisioned for yourself, or what your parents had envisioned for you and then projected on you. And that is no shade on your folks. I'm sure they're
no,
wonderful people. We all
facts.
do it.
Yeah,
I've done it with my son. I see it, and I'm trying to course correct.
sure.
He's 19. I'm trying to course correct. Um, but how do you really, when you're learning that lesson of loving yourself and accepting yourself, how do you give yourself like your own space um, to sit with that and say, okay, I love this part of me. It's not exactly where I want it to be right now, but I can still love me, and I'm gonna work on it. How did you talk yourself through that?
Well, first of all, I still talk myself through it every single day. I am a constant work in progress, and living with anxiety implies just that. Like and knowing that there are going to be days when I can't get out of bed, and that's okay. And that is the acceptance that is really good, but it's not the acceptance to where it's like I've just accepted that my life and my mind is terrible, that I'm going to be constantly at war. Like there's so much negativity that we could just accept. And
Yes.
it's also the power of and is real. And I don't think these things are mutually exclusive. I think that we can accept ourselves and love ourselves for where we are and do the work to improve every single day. When we start off with a negative, and I tell people it's much like going to the gym or losing weight. Most, and I'm just generalizing, most people start a weight loss journey because they hate themselves. They hate where
Mhm.
they're at. They hate the weight that they're at. They hate where their body's at, whatever. There's a hate or a negative emotion attached to that,
Mhm.
which makes the process so much harder. And
Mhm. Mhm.
there's a negative mindset with that. But I'm like, what if you could accept the fact that and have gratitude for the fact of where your body is now, what it's carried you through, what you've
Yes.
survived through, the fact that you still have XYZ, or and then say, and I'm going to work to improve my body. That process to get there isn't going to feel so hard and so negative. It's going to be enjoyable. Now, that implies that my mental health journey has been enjoyable, and it hasn't always. So, and very recently, January was a very hard stint on me. I had a 3-day anxiety attack where I didn't get off the couch. And but the whole time that happened, and it was triggered by a lot of events, because we're not perfect people. The process that I coach and train on with young people is very much followed up with, this is still something I do every single day. This is not a one stop shop. This is not a one time fix all. In fact, I don't believe that there really is. Because I think
Mhm.
human beings, we're flawed by nature. We're all different. It's just how can we support each other and love each other through this process and make life not so hard, right? And make it so much more enjoyable. And, those 3 days when I couldn't get off the couch and I was just miserable, I remembered in those moments, because your rational brain is always there, right? You got the
Yes.
irrational and the rational. And the rational is like, wow, it's been like years since you've had moments like this. They used to come monthly.
Wow.
And that's a
Wow.
win.
That
So
is good.
congrats.
Yeah.
And then it's also like, how many of these have you been through? I mean, you've made it through all of them. So
Mhm.
just allow this process and just be better on the other side. In fact, when you get to the other side, tell people about it, because they're going to want to know that.
Yes.
Because I think a lot of people look at me, Candy, from time to time, and they're like, I want to get to a place where you're at. I want to get to a place where I don't have anxiety. And I'm like, or they say, have you cured it? I really want to cure my anxiety. And I'm like, I don't know who said that, but that
Mhm.
was not me. And
Mhm.
I live with it every single day. I don't like the narrative that I got rid of it. I've never said that. I
Mhm.
live with it to show people that you can live with mental health struggles and have a happy life,
Yes.
period. So,
Yes. That is a beautiful message. It really is, because it gives a lot of people, I'm sure, hope to know. Because it can sound super heavy to say it's never going to go away. It sounds super heavy, a little scary, and almost a little defeatist at sometimes. But then knowing that you can live with it and still thrive and still have a full, rich life is very hopeful and very encouraging. And you
yeah.
talked about in your book, and I love this part because you share your experience with you had rapid weight gain. And yeah, and then you had to go back and unpack how that happened, how it snuck up on you, why you didn't see it. And I have experienced that as well. And I had to look back and go, what in the holy what? Like,
I
how
know.
did I get here? Like, you just wake up one day and you're like trying to put on those tan shorts and you're like, oh, that's from the book, y'all. They're not coming up over past my knees. What happened? And then you got to go. The healthy thing to do is to go back and unpack it, give yourself some grace, and create a plan if you can to overcome, right? I mean, what else would you say about that?
I would say it's like a critical moment. I think everyone can look back and see a critical moment in their life where they were basically, you had two paths to choose, right? You
Yeah.
could either accept this, and just live this way, and this is just the way it is. And, you know, that's hard to do. Okay. That's hard for me in that moment. There's been a couple of those moments throughout my life that I've written about in the book, but that was a pivotal moment where it was like, I could just accept the fact that I gained almost 70 pounds and, go from an athlete to definitely a non-athlete, binge eater, binge drinker, just all of these behaviors that were just so insane looking back, just insane. But the repercussions from those behaviors I still live with today as well. I
Mhm.
still live with, binge eating. I still live with, just a lot of unhealthy behaviors wrapped around all that. I no longer drink alcohol. I haven't for a few years now.
Good for you.
Um, just because it leads to other things. You start to
Mhm.
identify certain triggers, and that's the
Mhm.
ownership piece, that I write about in
Mhm.
the book. It's like, this is on me.
Mhm.
So back to that moment, it's all about choosing your hard, right? So you
Yeah.
can stay in these moments, which that would have been really hard mentally, emotionally, all the things, just hard on my body, hard on my mind. Or I could do the work, do the work.
Yep.
And both pathways are hard to do, period. Like, it is hard. It's just hard. So you really got to choose your hard. You really do. And if I knew that whatever hard I was going to choose, like, I wanted to do the one that was healthy and that served me,
Yeah.
and moved me forward. And that wasn't an overnight process, friends. I really want to be very clear. I still work on that today. I still
Yes.
work on those things today. I mean, I can't carry mac and cheese in the house because I eat the entire box. Like, there are certain things that I know about myself because of the work that I've done. And it is a struggle some days. And I don't want to bring light to any of that. But
Mhm.
the work comes from the reflection, from the self forgiveness. My God, I can't talk enough about the self
Yes.
forgiveness, but
Yes.
just acknowledging how far you've come. I've come so far. And I'll be honest with all your listeners, there are days when I look in the mirror and I still see 70 pounds. That
Mhm.
is part of the repercussions that I
Mhm.
live with today. And
Mhm.
it's because of those decisions, because that's how I chose to cope with my anxiety and depression at the time, were behaviors that were not healthy and did not serve me. I'm
Mhm.
38 years old. Those things, I was 19, 20, 21 at the time. I still live with the repercussions of that, but
Mhm.
they don't control me. And I want to be clear. That's the no suffering from anymore. The fact that I know these things about myself is the control. Like, I'm in
Mhm.
control of this,
Mhm.
and yeah, it's just, I could go on and on about it, but yeah. So
You're showing up for yourself every day, and you're utilizing the self-awareness that you've gained along your journey, to maintain boundaries with food and to know what your, I don't know how you feel about this word, what your triggers are, and and being able to get in front of how to deal with if something does set you down a path to where you start maybe revisiting old behaviors. Because I stopped drinking too, and it was the most freeing thing that I could have possibly done for my health, because everything snuck up on me through that haze.
yeah.
And once I lifted that haze, I was able to see things more clearly. And I show up for myself every day. You talk about walking 3 miles every day in your book. I walk 2 to 4 miles, depending on my day, if I'm doing weight training, every day. And it has chef's kiss my mental health.
I know, but that was something you discovered, right? Like,
Yes.
I I had no idea. One day this is interesting. Again, healthy that serve you, but
Yeah.
I had just follow some people on social that I respect, and I'm like, oh, they're walking every day, but
Hmm.
they're saying there's so many benefits to that. Like,
Hmm.
I've never done that, so maybe I
Hmm.
should try it. And guess what? It's a behavior that's healthy and that
Hmm.
serves you. In
Yep.
the book, I talk about three things: act, assess, and adjust.
Yes.
And what I mean by that is, and this is why it's so simple. This is nothing I talk about in the book is like jargon or these things that you try that are just impossible.
Right.
I'm very much trying to give people the ownership over their mental and emotional health. So for example, the walking, I acted on that behavior. I acted on it, which means I tried it, right? I went out and tried it. I did it for a few days, and then I assessed. I assessed how I was feeling. Was this beneficial for me? Is this something that was good for me? Because the reality is, it's not good for everybody. And what I mean by that is, you may hate it. Like, you don't
Hmm.
want to attach a negative emotion to this behavior. That's what the
Hmm.
assessment is all about. Like, was this good for me? Is this something I could continue? And then adjust if needed,
Hmm.
adjust the process if needed. And I think there's so much power in act, assess, adjust when you're trying to discover these healthy, proactive coping skills that can move you forward. Like I said, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, financially, or in your relationships. So that's what I'd say about that.
Beautiful. And I would highly encourage, and I am not sponsored. I'm just saying, if if you want to learn more about act, assess, adjust, which is a process or a strategy I'm going to start using, because it makes so much sense. Brittany explains it more clearly in the book and gives you an example, that is beautiful, how she figured out she can't ride with other people. And I don't want to give away all the book, um, but I related to you in that moment. It made me reflect on a business trip that I had taken last year and how my anxiety went off the charts because I did not have a vehicle of my own. And I have some pretty severe dietary allergies, so I was not able to go get the things that I needed, and I didn't have the voice to ask to be taken. So the next year, when I went on the business trip, I got my own vehicle, and it was a game changer. Um, no anxiety, enjoy the trip. I had access to the food that I could tolerate and that nourished me. So I felt better the entire time I was there. And it really made, like, I really resonated with that part of where you talk about that in the book. But um, when you have a strategy like act, assess, and adjust, and we'll kind of finish with this if that's okay with you and leave
Sure.
this with our listeners. What are some of the long-term effects of having some of these coping strategies in your toolbox?
What do you mean? Be more specific.
Sure. So you're someone who you're a teen maybe that's walking around and you've got some anxiety. You're really not sure what to do. You're hearing about coping skills and you're thinking, do I invest the time in trying to figure out the coping skill that works for me? What's going to be the payoff down the road if I do the work now?
Well, I think the great clarity, by the way, that was so good. That's kind of where I thought you were going. So I was like, okay. But I think one of the fun things I like to point out is that the time's going to pass anyway, right? The time passes anyway in our
Mm,
lives. So we
yeah.
might as well be working towards something positive now because time flies, friends, right? It's like, what is happening? See, that's one of the things. Like, time's moving so fast, I can't even see the future. Like, what is happening right now? But I give yourself grace in this process. But again, I think it's hard to see like a specific, like, what could these coping skills do for me in the future. I think one of the main points that it does is it teaches you how to advocate for yourself. It teaches you naturally how to set boundaries. It teaches you naturally to identify the things that bring you joy. And it also, as you grow into an adult, like I said, your responsibilities go like this and the time you have for yourself goes like this. But if you can establish those healthy habits now, you're more likely to continue them in the future. We my husband still plays baseball, right? He's played baseball his whole life. He's 40 years old. He loves it,
Yeah.
competitive, all the things, and coaches. But there's so many people he went to school with that, when they were out of school, they were done and they no longer play. And I hear it all the time. I wish I would have. I wish I would have.
Mhm.
But it wasn't one of those things at the time in their life that brought them joy, so they didn't lean into it. They didn't lean into it at the time. Now they're getting back into it, so it's nice to see. But my husband identified very early on in his life a huge identity with that sport. So he could have easily dropped it out of high school, but he wanted to maintain it and still does it today and says he's going to be playing until he's 80 years old, which I hope he will. He's
Oh, that's
very
awesome.
good. But that has served him so well physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, because when you have that joy, that means to escape even adult life, and I put that in quotes because again, I don't know what that is. Okay. I always tell teenagers there's no difference between me and you other than I pay my own bills. That's the only difference. Like, there's literally no other difference other than the fact that I've got some like wrinkles around my eyes now, but that's okay. Right? I think the long term effects are some of the things that like you just won't know till you get there. But when you get there, you don't want to look back and be like, I wish I would have, continued with these things. But I think that's the act, assess, and adjust just in real time. And I wish I would have. There are definitely certain things I look back that I'm like, I wish I would have continued that I do now. So I'm grateful I have those things now. but I didn't get into them because I didn't want to be judged, or I wanted to hang out with the cool kids and do what the cool kids did. YOLO was a big thing when you're young, but
Yeah,
it's so detrimental if it's not something that is healthy and that serves you. So
it's true.
it's kind of an interesting question, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, teens, show up for yourself, pour into yourself. You're worthy, you deserve it, and you can come out on the other side and live a full life and have these great coping skills to pull from. So,
And
really,
parents too. I really do want to encourage the adults. Like, these are not tactics or tools that are just for teens. Like,
yeah.
if you can lead and live by example in your household for your teenager, I mean, when they see how happy and elevated, or those things that radiate from you, that is so powerful for them to see. Just observing, and modeling that behavior, and not being a perfect person, and being honest about that. I think one of the most powerful things about my relationship with my mom now is, I really valued how, she definitely had boundaries, right? She was definitely a parent, not a friend.
Hmm.
But she did have moments of conversations with me, like, I totally understand. This was an experience I had in high school. This is something that happened to me, and this is how I dealt with it. And then she would tell me whether that was positive or negative and what that had on her life in the future. Like, there were those types of conversations which were valuable, because I had a best friend at the time whose mother was not that way, very restrictive, very hard boundaries as a parent, which, again, if that's your parenting style, great, I love it. But that had a negative effect on the behavior that my friend experienced, because she felt so not seen, and so not, she
Hmm.
couldn't communicate. And I wish her well now in life, but there were so many things that she engaged in to really cope with the fact that she just felt isolated, and even from her parents. And I'm not blaming the parents, right? Listen, ownership, right? She was in total control over her behavior,
Hmm.
but she just didn't have that safe place to talk about that. So it can be hard to be a parent. I can imagine. Again, I'm not one. I just have experience with one, with my mom, my dad, obviously, who are not perfect people, right? But
There's no
I
such thing as perfection.
yes, I know. And so that's the grace, right? To give yourself grace, and it's not your fault. Because I just hear that from parents all the time. Like, it's my fault my kid is this way. I'm like, no,
Yeah.
like, no, like, it's okay. Like, it's going to be fine. But yeah, so.
Oh, well, Brittany, so many wonderful bits of advice and wisdom and personal experience that you're speaking from the heart. You're very authentic and really appreciate that. And I think you've made your message and your book very relatable. And you've distilled down these principles in a way that those of us walking around without a psychology and counseling degree can understand, and strategies that we can put into practice today with no money, just effort. So that we need your light in the world, and I'm so grateful that you were on here today to talk to us about all these things. So just wish you well, and can't wait to continue to watch your career, and I'll be watching for your next book too.
Yay! Thank you so much for having me. This was wonderful. So.
Thank you.